If I had known the last week of my pregnancy would spiral like this, I wouldn't have packed that overnight bag. I live in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. It's one of those places where the trees dress up for every season, and spring mornings look like a Pinterest board. That morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, warm and golden. I sat at the table, one hand resting on my belly, 9 months pregnant, and already talking to the baby like we were best friends. "Good morning, little one," I whispered. "You ready for the world?" Everything should have felt perfect. I had a husband who adored me, a career I loved as an ER nurse, and a baby on the way after years of hoping. And yet, something in my chest felt off. Not fear, not hormones, just that low hum of dread, like the calm before a storm you can't see yet. 3 years ago, I met Aaron at the hospital. He's a pediatrician and exactly the kind of guy who buys flowers for grieving parents and volunteers on his days off. Our connection had been instant, gentle, warm, no games. We married a year later, and when we found out I was pregnant, Aaron cried harder than I did. He'd just flown out to Chicago for a medical conference. It was only supposed to be 5 days, and I told him not to worry. But now, sitting there in our tiny yellow kitchen with the baby room painted soft green and ready to go, I didn't feel okay. I felt alone. My phone buzzed. I saw the name and sighed. "Mom," I picked up anyway. "Hey, Mom. Leah, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" My mother, Clarissa, asked like she cared. She didn't. I knew that tone too well. "Honey dipped in frost." "Fine. The baby's doing great." "That's good. Aaron's still away?" "Yeah, 3 more days." She made a noise like she was chewing on disappointment. "I still don't like you staying by yourself. Maybe you should stay here until he gets back." There it was, the bait. "I'm fine, Mom. Maria comes by every day to check on me." Maria's one of my coworkers and one of the few people who actually listens when I talk. "Well, Christine thinks you should stay with us. You're due any minute, and if anything happens," I cut her off gently. "Okay, maybe. I'll think about it. Christine is my older sister, beautiful, charming, always 5 steps ahead when it came to getting what she wanted. She worked for my mom's real estate agency and was basically a local celebrity in heels. The minute we hung up, I texted Aaron, "Might stay at Mom's until you're back, just in case. Don't worry, I'll call you the second anything happens." His reply was instant. "That'd make me feel better. I'll come back immediately if anything changes. Love you." I smiled at the screen, feeling his calm reach me through the pixels. Then I sent another message to someone I didn't tell Mom about. "Dad, I might stay with Mom for a bit, just while Aaron's gone. I'll be okay." The reply came a few minutes later. "Let me know if anything feels off. I'm always here, Leah." I packed just the essentials: pajamas, prenatal vitamins, the baby book Aaron and I had been writing in every night. I tried not to overthink the decision as I pulled into my mother's driveway. The house looked exactly like I remembered, big, white bricked, and cold as a museum inside. It even smelled the same: cinnamon and expensive perfume. Clarissa met me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There you are. Look at you. You're huge." "I'm due in 2 weeks," I said with a forced laugh. Christine appeared from the hallway, wearing full makeup at 10 a.m. "Wow, you're glowing," she said, in that voice that always made me feel like I was being measured. We played house for 2 days. Clarissa cooked. Christine gave me unsolicited baby advice like she was a parenting guru. I tried to pretend I didn't feel like an intruder in my own childhood home. But by day 3, things started to get weird. At breakfast, I wore a pink maternity dress Aaron had picked out for me. Clarissa looked at it, then at me. "That color makes you look tired. Maybe something darker would be more flattering." "It was a gift," I said quietly. "Men never understand these things," she replied, sipping her coffee. "By the way, does your father know about the baby?" I blinked. "Of course. He's really excited." Clarissa's mouth tightened. "Of course he is. Promising the world like he always does." That tone, I knew it too well. Bitterness wrapped in silk. Later that day, Christine took me shopping for baby things. She was oddly cheerful, recommending this and that. But right before we left the store, she muttered under her breath, "You're lucky, you know. Husband, baby, perfect life. But things can change fast." I stopped. "What does that mean?" She flashed me a smile. "Nothing. Just saying. Life's unpredictable." That night, I couldn't sleep. The baby kicked gently, like she was restless too. Something about Christine's words unsettled me. I tried reading, I tried calming music, but my thoughts kept circling the same drain. The next morning, when Clarissa went out to run errands, I walked into her study. I shouldn't have, but curiosity had claws, and they were already sunk in. Inside her desk drawer, buried under real estate papers and old receipts, I found something strange: my birth certificate and an envelope with my dad's name on it, William Maddox. Inside was a letter, but most of the ink had faded. Except one sentence still lingered in blue. I never wanted to leave her. I froze. "What are you doing?" I jumped, the letter shaking in my hands. Christine stood in the doorway, her eyes like knives. "I was just looking for nothing." "Sorry." She didn't blink. "Rummaging through Mom's stuff? That's not like you." I was just, I don't know, nostalgic. Christine stepped aside. "Let's go before Mom gets back." That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around midnight, I went downstairs for water and heard them whispering. "It'll be soon," Christine said. Clarissa's voice followed. "We'll handle it. Just keep her calm until then. What about Aaron? When he returns, we'll adjust. For now, just follow the plan." I backed away like a ghost, heart pounding. What plan? That night, I texted Aaron. "Conference extended?" He responded, "Yeah, 2 more days. Everything okay? I'm not sure. Something feels wrong. I'll tell you when I can." I didn't mention the letter, or the whispering, or the way Christine had looked at me when she caught me snooping. The next morning, I woke up with a sharp pain in my belly. Not a kick, a contraction, real and deep. I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed black. Dead. I charged it last night. Panic rose in my throat. I rushed to Clarissa's room, knocking hard. "Mom, I think I'm in labor. We need to go to the hospital." She was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed. At 5 in the morning, she looked at me like I was a stranger. "So? What do you mean, so?" "Please, we have to go now." "You made your choice, Leah," she said coldly. "You chose him. Now, deal with it." My heart slammed in my chest. "What are you talking about?" Christine appeared behind me. "What's all the noise?" "She's in labor," Clarissa said flatly. "Wants us to drive her." Christine smiled, slow and mean. "That's what her car's for, isn't it?" I staggered toward the front door and saw my car parked outside. But something was off. I fumbled for the keys on the entry table. Christine tossed them to me like it was a game. "We made sure it's all tuned up," she said. "Hope it runs smooth." I didn't like her tone. My stomach cramped again, stronger now. I rushed outside, got in, turned the key. The engine revved, but the car didn't move. I got out, looked. All 4 tires, slashed. I dropped to my knees on the driveway, alone, in labor, betrayed by the 2 women who were supposed to love me. Then, in the distance, I heard a car. A sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway. The door opened, and my father stepped out. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. But there he was, William Maddox. My dad, dressed in a navy coat and jeans, his hair more silver than I remembered, eyes filled with panic and purpose. "Leah," he said, rushing over. "Are you all right?" I couldn't even speak. I just nodded, tears running down my cheeks as another contraction clamped down, sharp and deep. "They slashed my tires," I whispered, barely able to stand. "They wouldn't take me to the hospital." He didn't ask anything else, just wrapped his arms around me, guided me to the back seat of his car, and said, "Breathe, I've got you now." As he drove, fast but steady, I laid back, focusing on the rhythm of the road, the passing lights, the warmth of his voice. "Your message last night, it didn't sit right with me. I booked the earliest flight. Got in an hour ago. I didn't even stop at the hotel." I could hear the anger buried under his calm. "They left you alone, knowing you were this close." "What kind of people?" He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he meant. My mother and sister had always been skilled at making cruelty look like concern. They never shouted, they never shoved, but they knew how to twist love into something sharp and quiet. When we pulled up to the emergency entrance at Cleveland Memorial, nurses rushed out with a wheelchair. As they wheeled me in, I turned to Dad and said, "Call Aaron, let him know, please." He nodded and pulled out his phone immediately. I could hear him as the doors swung closed behind me. "She's safe now." They tried to trap her, but I got to her in time. The nurse guided me through check-in and straight into maternity. As she hooked me up to the monitors, she gave me a warm smile. Looks like we've got ourselves a determined little one. Contractions are strong, but you're not fully dilated yet. We've got time. I exhaled, trying to slow my breathing. Thank you. I didn't think I was going to make it. She patted my arm. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. A few minutes later, the door opened again. It was Maria, my coworker, my friend. You're a hard one to keep up with, she said, walking in, her face etched with concern but relief. I was off today, but when I heard you were admitted, I ran out the door. I almost laughed, despite the pain. Glad someone's running toward me for once. Dad returned, face pale but steady. Aaron's on his way. He's catching the next flight out of Chicago. I told him everything. I nodded. I'm scared, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Not of the birth. Just. Everything. Maria took my hand and didn't let go. You're strong, Leah. Whatever they tried to do you, it ends now. You've already won by surviving it. The nurse came back in to check on my progress. Still early labor, she said gently. But with the way your body's responding, I wouldn't be surprised if this baby wants to meet you today. As the minutes passed, the contractions got stronger, deeper. I felt like my body was splitting itself in two, and every time I thought I'd reached my threshold, another wave came crashing down harder than the last. Dad stayed right there, helping with ice chips, whispering encouragement. I never imagined this moment with him, and yet, having him there felt right. Safe. Like the part of me that had been missing for so long had finally returned. Between two contractions, I looked at him and asked, "Why did you really come? Not just because of a message. Why were you watching that closely?" He hesitated, then took a breath. "Because I've always been watching. Ever since you were a kid, Leah, I never stopped. Your mother made it impossible to be in your life, but I found ways to check in quietly. When I heard you were pregnant, I hired someone to help me keep tabs on your safety. Nothing invasive. Just in case something ever felt off." I blinked, unsure whether to be shocked or grateful. "You tracked me?" He nodded, looking ashamed. "Only your location. I never read your messages or listened in. I needed to know you were okay." I couldn't even argue. Because if he hadn't, I would have given birth alone on a slashed driveway, surrounded by silence. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. Then, the door burst open, and Aaron walked in, hair a mess, tie loosened, eyes wild. "Leah!" I'd never seen him look so panicked. He rushed to my side and kissed my forehead, holding my hand like it was a lifeline. "You made it," I said weakly. "Of course I did," he replied, brushing hair from my face. "The second your dad called, I left the conference. I'm never leaving your side again." They stepped away as the nurses came in to prepare for delivery. Dad gave Aaron a nod. "Thank you for taking care of her," Aaron said, voice low. "No," William said, eyes steady. "She's the one who survived them. I just gave her the ride. I couldn't say anything." I just squeezed Aaron's hand and braced myself. An hour later, I was pushing. It felt like I'd left my body, floating in a storm of pain and effort. I heard voices encouraging me, felt cold cloth on my forehead, tasted salt in my mouth, then silence, followed by the sharp, perfect cry of a newborn. "It's a girl," the doctor said, his voice beaming. "She's healthy, she's beautiful." They placed her on my chest, and I finally saw her. Small, pink, wrinkled, and real. "Hi," I whispered. "You're finally here." Aaron kissed me again, his eyes full of tears. "You did it. She's perfect." William stood a little ways back, his hand over his mouth. I looked at him and said, "Come meet your granddaughter." He stepped forward, slowly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to exist in this moment. But when he saw her, his face crumpled. "She looks like you," he said. "She looks like the best parts of both of you." Later, as the hospital room settled into quiet hums and distant beeping, we talked. William and Aaron sat near the window while I held my daughter and listened. William looked at me and said, "I need to tell you the truth, the whole truth." Aaron nodded. "I already know. She deserves to hear it too." So he told me everything, that he'd never abandoned me, that my mother made it impossible for him to be in my life, that she'd twisted everything, his past failures, his attempts to rebuild, even the divorce, until it looked like he walked away. I didn't have money, I didn't have power, and Clarissa hated being tied to someone who couldn't impress her circle. When I tried to visit you, she filed restraining orders. When I wrote letters, she burned them. I only reconnected with you after you graduated because you reached out. I remembered reaching out to a stranger who shared my name, wondering if it would matter. "I thought you left me," I said. "That's what she told me, that you were selfish, that you gave up." "I never did," he said softly. "I never will." I looked down at the baby in my arms. So small, so new. "You didn't just save me," I told him. "You saved her too." I knew then that what Clarissa and Christine did wasn't just cold. It was cruel and dangerous. I'd always known they were calculated. I just didn't know they were willing to let an unborn child suffer to make a point. But what now? What do you do after your own family tries to erase you? The next morning, I woke up in a quiet hospital room, sunlight filtering through half-closed blinds, my daughter sleeping beside me in her bassinet. Her tiny fingers were curled near her chin, like she was dreaming about something important. For a moment, the world felt still and untouched. Aaron was dozing in the chair beside my bed, shoes off, arms folded over his chest like he'd been guarding me in his sleep. My dad sat across the room reading something on his phone, but his eyes flicked up the second I stirred. I smiled weakly. He smiled back. It was a strange thing, waking up after a storm that nearly swept you away and realizing you were still here, still whole. But the moment didn't last long. There were questions to answer, choices to make, and people to hold accountable. After breakfast, when Eleanor was taken for a quick checkup and the room emptied out, I asked the question I hadn't been able to stop thinking about all night. "What happens now, Dad?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Now, you decide how much of your past you want to carry forward." I nodded slowly. "And what about Clarissa and Christine?" Aaron woke up at that point, rubbing his face, already catching on to the conversation. "We can press charges," he said. "They disabled your car, tampered with your phone. That's reckless endangerment at best. Attempted harm at worst." My dad looked at me. "I'll support whatever you choose, Leah. I mean that." And I believed him. But I also needed time, because as much as I wanted to see them face consequences, a small part of me still ached for answers. Not apologies, not closure. Just the truth of why. Why do some people spend their lives trying to break the ones they created? Later that afternoon, I was discharged and wheeled out of the hospital holding Eleanor in my arms, wrapped in a soft green blanket Maria had brought from home. The sky was overcast but gentle, like even the weather knew not to be too harsh today. Aaron carried our things, my dad walked beside us, and I felt like I was floating through a version of reality I never expected. We went straight to our home. Aaron had already prepped the place for the baby, and everything looked exactly how I left it, except now it felt different, safer, realer. That night, while Aaron rocked Eleanor to sleep and my dad cooked us a quiet dinner, I sat in the living room and stared at a photo on the wall. Me and Christine as kids, smiling, identical ribbons in our hair. There was a time we were close, before ambition poisoned everything, before favoritism twisted the roots of our bond. When my dad joined me with 2 cups of tea, I asked softly, "What was she like? Before the divorce?" He paused, then handed me the tea. She was sharp, driven, but not cruel. Something changed after I left. I think she started building a version of the world where only winners mattered, and the ones who didn't win fast enough were disposable. I thought about that for a long time. It didn't excuse what she did, but it made the pieces fall into place. Clarissa had spent her life controlling people with perception, with image, with silence that cut deeper than words. And when I stopped needing her approval, I became her enemy. 2 days later, a letter arrived. It was handwritten. The envelope smelled faintly like her perfume. I sat on the porch holding it, unsure whether to open it or set it on fire. Eventually, the first opened it. It started with my name, then dove straight into excuses. No apologies, just justifications. She talked about how hard it was being a single mother, how she had to be strong, how she worried that Aaron and I would be naive, that she didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I read every line with a numb face. At the end, she wrote, "I hope you understand someday that everything I did was to protect you." I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. "You didn't protect me," I whispered. "You tried to break me." I handed the envelope to Aaron when he came out to check on me. "Can you file this with the rest of the trash?" He nodded and didn't ask questions. That night, I told him I was ready. I wanted to press charges, not just for me, for Eleanor. Because if we didn't stand up now, the next time she decided someone's decisions were inconvenient, she'd try it again. Maybe with Christine's help, maybe on someone else, but it wouldn't stop. And silence only feeds people like that. The police report was filed the next morning. We had text messages, timeline records, photos of the slashed tires, testimony from William, even screenshots showing the phone logs mysteriously deleted. Maria backed us up, as did the hospital's triage records. It wasn't emotional anymore. It was methodical, truth written in timestamps and evidence. Christine was questioned first. She cracked fast, blamed Mom, said she didn't think it would go that far, that it was just a warning. Clarissa, on the other hand, stayed composed, polished. She claimed we were exaggerating, that nothing actually happened, that the tires were old, that the phone just needed an update. But the court wasn't impressed with spin. A few weeks later, a hearing was set. Christine took a deal, pleaded guilty, got a suspended sentence, agreed to mandatory counseling. Clarissa, stubborn as ever, was found guilty of reckless endangerment and obstruction. Community service. Probation. A public record that couldn't be scrubbed. Her real estate license was suspended pending review. Her image shattered. Just like that. After the verdict, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, lighter. Like someone had wiped a film off my skin I didn't know was there. We didn't celebrate. We didn't throw a party. But we did light a candle that night. One small flame in the living room. I held Eleanor close, watched her eyelids flutter, and whispered to her, "You're safe, and I'll never let the darkness touch you." That was enough for me. That was the real victory. Weeks passed. Then months. Seasons shifted. Aaron and I found our rhythm as new parents. My dad visited often, usually bringing bagels or books for Eleanor, and sometimes staying overnight just to give us a break. He even moved his consulting office to the east side so he could be nearby. It wasn't grand gestures. It was showing up, changing diapers, taking the night shift when we were too tired to speak. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. He just needed to be here. And he was. Always. Then one day, in the middle of October, I saw her again, Clarissa, at the grocery store, of all places. She looked smaller somehow, not in height, but in presence. Like the shine had dulled. She noticed me first. We locked eyes over the freezer aisle. She looked down at Eleanor, then back at me. And for a second, I saw something flicker, maybe regret, maybe grief. "She's beautiful," she said quietly. I nodded. "She is." There was a long silence. Then she spoke again. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try, if you'll let me." I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, really looked, and saw not the mother I once knew, but the woman she became. Pride cracked, walls lowered, guilt finally surfacing. "We'll see," I said, not as a promise, just a possibility. The days after that encounter at the grocery store moved slowly, like autumn leaves drifting down without hurry. I didn't rush into any decisions. Didn't return Clarissa's sudden text messages or the 2 stiff apology emails she sent the week after. I wasn't avoiding her to be cruel. I just needed space to understand how I felt without being pulled back into the gravity of her guilt. Forgiveness isn't like flipping a switch. It's more like untying a knot, one loop at a time, not knowing what you'll find at the center. I had Eleanor now, this tiny human who relied on me for everything, and that gave me a clarity I never had before. My job wasn't to make my mother feel better about what she did. My job was to protect the peace I had fought like hell to earn. Aaron supported whatever I decided. He didn't pressure me, didn't try to guide me either way. Just made space, holding Eleanor while I stared at nothing some nights, letting me think. William was more careful. He didn't speak her name unless I brought it up. But when I did, he always listened fully before offering anything back. That kind of trust meant more to me than I could explain. One crisp Saturday morning, we were sitting outside in the backyard. Eleanor was 6 months old now, teething and fussy, drooling on everything with relentless joy. Aaron was pulling weeds while William sipped his coffee beside me. The trees had just started to turn. Yellow, gold, the occasional burst of red like fireworks in slow motion. I broke the silence. "She wants to meet Eleanor." My dad didn't look surprised. He just waited. I sighed. "She said she's going to therapy. Christine, too. That they're trying." William stirred his coffee slowly. "Do Do you believe her? I don't know, I answered honestly. But part of me wants to give Eleanor a grandmother. I just don't want her growing up confused. Feeling what I felt, he finally spoke, measured and careful. Then set your boundaries before you open the door. Don't let guilt build the rules. Let your values do that. I nodded, taking that in. Because he was right. If I was going to let Clarissa back in, it couldn't be as the same woman who once locked the front door while I bled on the driveway. So I texted her that evening. Short. Clear. You can come next weekend. 1 hour. Our home. Bring only yourself. She replied within minutes. Thank you. I'll respect that. The following Saturday, she arrived exactly on time. No gifts. No dramatics. She wore a simple coat and soft expression. Her eyes lingered on Eleanor with a kind of reverence I didn't expect. She didn't ask to hold her right away, just watched from across the room while Aaron cradled our daughter, humming a lullaby under his breath. Clarissa's voice was softer than I remembered. She's breathtaking. I nodded. She's everything. We sat at the kitchen table. I offered her tea, more out of politeness than affection. She accepted it with a quiet thank you. For a few minutes, it felt like we were actors in a scene neither of us had rehearsed. Then she spoke. I wanted to say sorry, Leah, but I know that's not enough. I broke something between us. I can't undo that. I just want to be someone who earns back a sliver of your trust. I looked at her for a long time, searching for the lie, the manipulation, the old version of her that always twisted sincerity into strategy. But I didn't find her. Not yet. Maybe not today. You hurt me, I said finally. You endangered my child. And for what? To punish me for speaking to my father? Clarissa lowered her gaze. I hated him for so long. It became a habit. I couldn't separate my anger at him from my fears about you leaving me too. I thought if I controlled everything, I'd keep you close. But all I did was push you farther. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence fill the room. I wanted to believe she meant every word. I also knew that meaning something doesn't undo what's been done. She didn't ask for more time. She didn't ask to hold Eleanor. When the hour was up, she stood, thanked me again, and left. I watched from the window as she walked back to her car. Her posture was careful, like she didn't want to make the wrong move and lose even this sliver of permission. In the weeks that followed, she sent small messages, updates about therapy, articles about parenting, photos of her garden blooming again. She didn't push. She just left the door cracked. Christine reached out too. Her messages were shorter, clumsier, a mix of remorse and awkward attempts at reconnection. I didn't respond to most, but I read them. Because curiosity is a quiet thing, and sometimes it brings you back to the places that once hurt, just to see if they still do. Maria told me once, during one of our walks around the neighborhood, that healing isn't just about what you forgive, it's about who you decide to be after you've been broken. That stuck with me, because I wasn't trying to return to who I was before any of this happened. I was trying to grow into someone new, someone who didn't flinch at kindness, someone who didn't confuse loyalty with silence. Spring came again, this time with softer edges. Eleanor was crawling now, her laughter filling the house like sunlight. Aaron and I learned how to move as a team without even speaking, passing bottles and pacifiers like dance partners. William continued to visit every other weekend, reading books to Eleanor in his deep, calming voice, sometimes falling asleep with her in the recliner, both of them snoring. Our house was small, but it was full, not just with things, but with peace. And that felt rare enough to protect like treasure. Eventually, we invited Clarissa over again. This time, Aaron handed Eleanor to her carefully, watching closely. Clarissa held her granddaughter with both hands like she was holding something fragile and precious. She didn't cry. She didn't monologue. She just looked at Eleanor, then at me, and said, "Thank you for this moment." That was all. I didn't forgive her completely, but I allowed her in just enough to be seen, not trusted blindly. Christine came by weeks later, unannounced, holding a small bouquet and standing on our porch like a stranger. I didn't let her in. Not that time. But I took the flowers. We stood outside for 15 minutes. She apologized. Not perfectly, not eloquently, but with something real in her eyes. I told her, "It'll take more than words. But if you show up without a mask, we'll see." She nodded. And that was the start of something not broken, just unfinished. One evening, as Aaron and I sat watching Eleanor play with a stack of blocks, he asked, "Do you think she'll remember any of this?" I shook my head. Not this part. But she'll remember how we made her feel. Safe, heard, loved. That was the legacy I wanted for her. Not the generational pain. Not the silence passed down like tradition. Just a home where she could breathe without fear. That night, after Eleanor went to sleep, I opened a new journal. The first page said simply, "You survived it. Now live beyond it." Time passed the way it always does, after pain begins to fade, not all at once, but in pieces, like light through stained glass. We built a rhythm at home, not perfect, but ours. Morning started with Eleanor babbling from her crib, followed by coffee, soft lullabies, and Aaron reading the news aloud while feeding her spoonfuls of mashed banana. William had started coming by once a week, sometimes twice, slipping into grandparenthood so naturally it made me wonder how different things could have been if he'd been allowed to stay in my life from the beginning. He never spoke ill of Clarissa around Eleanor, never brought up the court hearing, never used his time with us to rehash old bitterness. He simply existed beside us like a stone pillar that had always been there but only now returned to view. I realized something watching him. Healing wasn't always loud. Sometimes it looked like quiet dinners, steady hands, and the kind of silence that wasn't empty but safe. Clarissa, on the other hand, remained cautious, never overstepping, never asking for more than I offered. Every visit was brief, polite, framed in soft smiles and tightly measured words. It was strange at first to see her stripped of control, asking instead of assuming, waiting instead of pushing. And yet, even with her new restraint, I didn't fully let my guard down. Maybe part of me never would. Trust rebuilt under fire rarely returns to its original shape. Still, she tried. One Saturday, she brought over a faded photo album from when I was a baby. We sat at the kitchen table while Eleanor played on the floor beside us. She flipped through the pages slowly, pausing at each image as if trying to summon something lost. One photo caught my eye, a hospital room, her holding me as an infant, William beside her looking both proud and uncertain. I hadn't seen that photo before. "You kept this?" I asked. She nodded. I almost threw it away once, but something stopped me. I traced my finger along the edge of the picture, wondering who had taken it, wondering how many moments like that were erased by resentment. I didn't ask. I wasn't ready for that story. Christine remained at a distance. She'd text every few weeks. Small things, an article about postpartum recovery, a silly meme about teething, sometimes a simple "how are you?" I didn't always reply, but when I did, I kept it short, neutral, a line drawn in ink instead of sand. I had learned the cost of letting people too close without asking what they carried behind their smiles. One afternoon, she sent a photo of a card Eleanor had made during a toddler art class we'd posted about online. A handmade one Christine had replicated and mailed. The front said "for my auntie" in glitter glue. Inside, she wrote a message I hadn't expected. "I don't expect to be in her life, but if she ever asks about me, I hope you can tell her that I learned from my mistakes, that I grew up, that I never stopped loving her, even from afar." I didn't cry, but I sat there for a long time, rereading that line until the words blurred. Growth doesn't always come knocking. Sometimes it waits at the edge of the yard, just hoping to be seen. That evening, after putting Eleanor down, I told Aaron about the card. He listened without interrupting, then asked, "Do you think you'll let Christine visit one day?" I thought about it. "Maybe," I said, "if she keeps showing me she means it. But it'll be on my terms." "And Eleanor's." Aaron nodded. "Then that's the right answer. We didn't need to fix everything. We just had to stop bleeding from what couldn't be fixed." Later that week, William invited me to lunch at a quiet bistro near the edge of town. We hadn't had one-on-one time in a while, and he seemed off. Not nervous, exactly, but focused. As soon as we sat down and ordered, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I've been holding on to this for a long time," he said, sliding it across the table. I opened it slowly, expecting a trinket, maybe something sentimental. Instead, it was a delicate gold locket. Inside, a photo of me as a child on one side and, to my surprise, another child on the other. A girl, my age, but not me. "Who is she?" I asked. William exhaled, folding his hands. Her name was Rowan. She was your half-sister. The world narrowed around me. I blinked, trying to keep my voice steady. Was? He nodded. She passed away, years ago. Congenital heart defect, her mother and I. We weren't together long. It was after your mother and I divorced. But she was real, and she was wonderful. I didn't know what to say, he continued, voice rough with memory. I never told you because I didn't want you to think I was keeping a second family secret. There was no secret, just pain. A part of my life I hadn't fully processed. I've carried this locket since she passed, but I think you should have it now. I looked down at the girl's face. Freckles. Same dark eyes as mine. Something in my chest cracked open. Not from betrayal, but from the quiet weight of what could have been. She looks like me, I whispered. William smiled, faint and sad. I know. When I got home that night, I told Aaron. He didn't react with shock or suspicion, just empathy. You know, he said gently, your dad's showing you that. It means he trusts you with his deepest grief. I held the locket that night while Eleanor slept beside me, thinking about how many truths live in silence, waiting for the right moment to be heard. Not every revelation is meant to shake the ground. Some just deepen your roots. In the following weeks, life returned to its familiar pace. I started back at work 3 days a week. Eleanor spent those hours with Maria, who had become part babysitter, part godmother, part best friend. My coworkers welcomed me back with open arms and a gift basket full of diapers, coffee pods, and in a mug that said Mama Mode activated. I found joy in being busy again, in helping patients, in remembering the part of me that existed outside motherhood. Aaron flourished at work too, balancing late-night calls with tickle fights and bath time songs. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were full, honest, hours. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, Clarissa stopped by unannounced. She stood at the door holding a large photo frame wrapped in brown paper. I know I should have asked first, she said, but I wanted you to have this. I took it from her hands and unwrapped it slowly. It was a restored family photo me, Aaron, Eleanor, and William stitched together from different images, but seamlessly edited. At the bottom it read, family is not who we're told to love. It's who stays when love needs proving. I looked up at her. She didn't say anything else, just smiled, turned, and walked away. I hung it in the hallway near the nursery, not because it made things perfect, but because it reminded me that healing doesn't erase the past, it reframes it. The frame hung quietly on the hallway wall, like a statement whispered rather than shouted. Every time I passed it, holding Eleanor or walking hand in hand with Aaron, I felt a strange mix of peace and memory. Not nostalgia, exactly more like recognition. The kind that comes from knowing things could have gone another way but didn't, that you made the hard choices and survived them. Eleanor was growing fast now. She'd started stringing together words, her tiny voice filled with questions that made the world feel brand new. Every morning she'd wake me with a soft tap or a giggle, and even when I was exhausted, even when my body ached, and the days felt endless, I never stopped being thankful for her. She was the proof that something good could still grow from fractured ground. The spring rains came early that year, turning our small backyard into a burst of green. William planted a peach tree near the back fence one Saturday, saying it was time to leave something for the future. Trees, he told Eleanor, as she helped him pat down the soil with her hands, are promises we make to people we haven't met yet. I didn't cry then, but I felt something lodge quietly in my chest, the kind of emotion that doesn't ask to be named. Clarissa continued to visit once every couple of weeks, always with permission, always respectful. She didn't push. She didn't pretend things were fine. She brought groceries sometimes, small things Eleanor liked, and spent most of her visits simply watching, soaking in what she had nearly destroyed. I still didn't let her be alone with my daughter, not because I believed she'd harm her, but because trust once shattered takes time to piece together, and some fractures remain no matter how carefully you glue them. Still, she was trying. And trying matters more than perfect apologies ever could. Christine was slower to resurface. She reached out again that summer, not with a card or gift, but with an offer. I've started working with a family nonprofit, she wrote in her email, helping kids who've been displaced by trauma. I don't know if it makes up for what I did, but I thought you should know I'm trying to make it count for something. I read the email 3 times, then left it unread in my inbox. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. One evening, as Aaron and I cleaned up after dinner, Eleanor dancing in her high chair with mashed peas on her nose, I looked at him and asked, "Do you think we're breaking the cycle?" He didn't need to ask what I meant. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked over, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I think you already did. We didn't talk about cycles much in our house, but we felt them. The old ones. The patterns passed through blood and silence, from parent to child to grandchild. The way some families hide pain under politeness. The way loyalty gets weaponized. I had seen that cycle my whole life, bending under it like it was law. But becoming a mother had cracked it open, not in one dramatic blow, but in small, stubborn choices. Choosing to speak up, choosing boundaries, choosing love that was safe, not performative. Every day, I chose again. And slowly, the weight of that old story began to lift. By Eleanor's second birthday, we had made new traditions. Saturday pancakes with banana slices shaped like moons. Story time under the soft glow of her nursery lamp. William reading from a worn book he used to read to me. Walks to the park where Aaron carried her on his shoulders and she squealed at birds. Even Clarissa was there that day, quietly watching from a distance, handing over a handmade dress that she'd sewn herself. I hadn't expected her to learn how to sew, but I also hadn't expected her to stand in the background, not center stage, simply grateful to be invited. That alone meant everything. After everyone left, I sat outside in the garden while Eleanor napped and Aaron washed dishes inside. William brought over 2 mugs of tea, sat beside me, and handed me an envelope. "This is for her," he said, "for when she's older." Inside was a letter addressed to Eleanor and a trust fund document. "You don't have to give it to her now," he said, "but when the time's right, I want her to know she's always had someone looking out for her." I held the letter to my chest. She already knows. Later that week, I opened my journal again, the one I started after her birth. The first page still said, "You survived it. Now live beyond it." I flipped to the end and added a final line. "Now build what you were never given," because that was what I was doing. Not just surviving, not just enduring, but building something new. A family held together not by guilt or appearances or fragile performances of love, but by presence, by honesty, by choice. The past still lived inside me, but it no longer led me. It no longer whispered that I owed anyone more than I owed myself. Eleanor would grow up with stories, yes, but they would be told with care. She'd know her mother had once been broken and rebuilt herself, that her grandfather had found his way back, that her father had stood steady even when the storm came, and that her grandmother and aunt had made mistakes they were still learning from. She'd know the truth, but she'd never be asked to carry its weight. The first time Eleanor pointed to the peach tree and asked, "Who planted that?" I smiled. "Your grandpa," I said. "He planted it for you." She ran to it, hugged its still thin trunk, and said, "It's mine now." And she was right. Everything we had built, everything we had repaired, everything we had let go of it belonged to her future, one shaped by love and the courage to start again. There was no fairy tale ending, no grand scene of closure, just life, unfolding as it always had, but now with more intention. The past still echoed sometimes, in dreams, in quiet moments, in memories stirred by a song or a scent, but it didn't own me. I had rewritten the legacy. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees and the garden filled with shadows, I sat beside William and Aaron on the porch, Eleanor chasing fireflies in the yard. Clarissa arrived quietly, standing at the edge of the light, watching but not intruding. I waved her in. She smiled and stepped forward slowly. Christine wasn't there. Not yet. Maybe never. But the space for her remained open, should she ever be ready to walk in with truth instead of excuses. The wind rustled through the leaves. Eleanor laughed somewhere near the rose bushes. Aaron placed his hand over mine. William sipped his tea. Clarissa sat down at a distance, just close enough to hear the laughter. The world didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be honest. And in that stillness, I realized something. I hadn't just saved myself, I had created a life that didn't need saving. That was the real ending. Not vengeance, not punishment, but peace. The kind that grows slowly, quietly, rooted deep like a tree planted in trust. Story 2. Olivia Wilson stretched out on the kitchen counter, looked up from the cookbook, and stared out the window. In front of her was the fall scenery of Greenville, Michigan, the crimson and gold painted trees swinging in the wind like a picture. As a nurse at the nearby hospital, she was well known. "I don't comprehend this issue, ma'am." From the dining table, she called her 12-year-old son, Aiden. As he struggled with his schoolwork, a math workbook was spread open in front of him. After wiping her hands and grinning, Olivia took a seat next her kid. "Which is causing you problems? This difficulty with fractions?" "I believe I have forgotten the teacher's instructions." Olivia started working through the issue with Aiden while softly stroking his hair. She sensed her son's daily development. Aiden shared her blue eyes and was a compassionate person with a keen sense of academic curiosity. She was also happy to observe that he was beginning to resemble his father, Robert, in height. When they had resolved the issue, the front door opened and they heard it. "I've returned home." The home was filled with the sound of a warm, deep voice. With a cry, "Dad!" Aiden sprung from his chair and hurried into the hallway. Olivia got up as well, getting ready to welcome her husband. Attention was often drawn to Robert because of his attractive looks and self-assured manner. He was proud of his accomplishments as a pharmaceutical business sales manager, giving his family a secure existence. Robert grinned and gave Aiden a hug before embracing Olivia, saying, "I got to come home early today. My most recent meeting was called off." "How lovely." Olivia grinned. "I had just begun to make dinner. I prepared your preferred lasagna." "Excellent." As he removed his jacket, Robert spoke. "How did today's classes go? Was that scientific endeavor successful?" With great excitement, Aiden started to tell his father what had happened that day. The teacher had applauded his model of a volcano. During his lunch break, he had played basketball with his friend Jason, and he said without hesitation. Robert nodded as he listened carefully and put his hands on his son's shoulders. Olivia enjoyed their joy as she watched this scenario. "Is it possible to earn $10,000 a month only from YouTube? From home? All?" With her stories, I accomplished precisely that. No voice, no face. If you're interested, click on a link in the description. She fell in love with Robert, who had come as a pharmaceutical sales representative 13 years ago when she was working at the hospital reception. She earned her nursing degree shortly after being married, and she continued to put a lot of effort into juggling work and family when Aiden was born. Despite their lack of wealth, she believed that they enjoyed a loving existence in this little town. It was a nice family talk around the dinner table. The next week, Robert added, there will be a significant business trip. He would be in Chicago for a significant pharmaceutical business show. He said eagerly, "I might get a good contract, but I'll be away for 3 days. We might be able to visit Disneyland next summer if all goes as planned." Aiden's gaze brightened. "Really? Will you make a commitment?" "I swear, of course." Robert clasped his son's hand and grinned. Olivia appreciated Robert's drive and ambition. In an effort to give his family a better life, he was always working for them. His work trips may be lengthy at times, but she knew they were necessary for the future of the family. Olivia and Robert relaxed from the day's stress by sitting on the living room sofa after putting Aiden to bed that evening. "How did the hospital go?" Robert rubbed Olivia's shoulders and inquired. "Too busy?" The ER was packed with people, as if the flu season had just begun. She closed her eyes as she responded. "However, I was able to make it to Aiden's school function. He is truly maturing." "Indeed. What a great child he is." Robert nodded slightly. "Olivia, it's all because of you. You're a wonderful mommy." Grinning, Olivia grasped her husband's hand. Her life's riches were these quiet times. Robert was getting ready for his journey the next morning. As he arranged the relevant paperwork in his briefcase and put clothing into his luggage, Olivia and Aiden observed from the kitchen. Olivia offered him his coffee and warned him to use caution. "Give us a call each evening." Naturally, Robert gave her a cheek kiss. "Take careful care of your mother, Aiden. Man to man, assure me." With a solemn gaze, Aiden nodded. "Dad, let me do it. I'll keep Mom safe." At the door, the three hugged and Robert climbed into a cab. Before the automobile vanished around the bend, Olivia and Aiden stood and waved. "Let's prepare you for school now." Olivia touched the shoulder of her son. Aiden grinned as he glanced up at his mother. Can we have a picnic when Dad returns, Mom? All three of us. That sounds very beautiful. Olivia stroked her son's head and replied, I'll surely go when Dad gets back. They went back inside and started their daily ritual as normal. The day following Robert's departure, Olivia got up earlier than normal before 6 in the morning. The alarm sounded. The first morning without her spouse, she was already in the kitchen brewing coffee. Felt a bit alone all the time. In the little light from the window, she was planning her day's activities in her head. You're up already, Mom. With drowsy eyes, Aiden emerged from the kitchen. Perhaps he had also woken up to the silence of the home without his father, even if it was earlier than normal. Good morning, my love. Olivia presented her kid with a glass of orange juice. Did you get a good night's sleep? Aiden sipped his juice and nodded. Has Dad given you a call? He hasn't called yet, but he will most likely do so this evening. Olivia grinned. After school today, will you play with Jason? No. Working on my science project is what I want to do. The one where the instructor spoke about utilizing the tablet to investigate space. Olivia was happy to see how enthusiastic her kid was. Recently, Aiden has been interested in astronomy and space. For his birthday last month, Robert got him a new tablet and installed a number of instructional programs. After that, you may share what you've learned with me over dinner tonight. After completing her shift at the hospital and sending her kid off at school, Olivia made a visit to the grocery store. To commemorate her husband's return, she chose to purchase a bottle of his favorite red wine. She looked at her phone while she waited in line at the cashier. Robert hadn't left any messages yet. He must be occupied. A quiet murmur came from her. She knew he was getting ready for a big business deal, so she wasn't concerned. Aiden was already back in the living room, absorbed in his iPad when she got home. He excitedly showed his mother the screen when he saw her arriving home. Look, Mom. This movie describes Jupiter's great red spot, and I have a ton of images of Jupiter. Sitting beside her kid, Olivia relished the moment and took part in his discoveries. He studied hard at home and at school, and she was pleased of it. Robert called over supper. Olivia responded with a look of mild relief. How was Chicago? Going good, although busy. Robert sounded a little worn out. I had a number of crucial meetings today, and tomorrow is jam-packed from dawn till dusk. Don't go overboard, Olivia warned worriedly. Aiden would like to speak with you. When she gave Aiden the phone, he started telling his father about his Jupiter project, what had happened at school, and the events of the day with excitement. He spoke without hesitation. Robert listened, acknowledging every now and again, but the talk abruptly ended. Can you still hear me, Dad? Curious, Aiden questioned. I apologize. I recently received a call again. Robert's voice returned. I'll give you another call tomorrow. Take careful care of your mother. Once the call was over, Aiden seemed quite disheartened. It seemed like Dad was rushing. Olivia wrapped her arm over the shoulder of her son. Dad is working on something significant. He's doing a lot of work for us. After putting her toddler to bed that night, Robert received a message from Olivia. Good night. I hope tomorrow brings you success. I adore you. No response was received. The following day went by in a similar manner. Aiden came home from school. He went straight to his iPad and started working on his space project and schoolwork. Olivia was getting ready to depart after preparing dinner early because she worked the night shift. Mom, Dad's message. As he looked at his iPad, Aiden murmured, I'll be late tomorrow night, he says. The show has been extended. Olivia had been anticipating her husband's return, so she was a little let down. I understand. All right. Tell Dad I'm going to work now, please. After working the night shift, Olivia came home to find Aiden dozing off on the sofa in the living room. He had the tablet on his chest. She carried her son to bed after gently lifting him without waking him. Mom? Half asleep, Aiden whispered. When will Dad return home? Tomorrow evening. He's going to be a little late. As she stroked her son's hair, Olivia responded, Do you feel alone? Although Aiden's question was straightforward, Olivia found it to have some emotional resonance. But I have you, so I'm good. She grinned. It's time to go to bed. Olivia went back to the living room and switched on the television after Aiden had fallen asleep, but she was unable to focus on the show. She was thinking back on her 13-year marriage to Robert. They had a steady relationship, but recently she felt as though they were getting farther apart. Maybe it was because they spent less time together due to his increased business travels. Just fatigue, she told herself. They would treasure family time once more after Robert got back. Perhaps going to a movie or having a picnic on the weekend. After making that choice, on the morning of the third day, she eventually dozed off. Olivia went to the hospital for work after dropping Aiden off at school. Tonight, Dad will be home. For dinner, what would you like? In the car, she inquired. Steak. Dad's favorite. Aiden responded right away. It sounds good. During my trip home, I will pick it up. Olivia grinned. Enjoy your day today. At the school's entrance, Aiden turned around and waved. Mom, you too. I'm looking forward to the movie with Dad. Olivia watched her son go. Olivia finished work and opened the front door with shopping bags in both hands. It was 5:30 p.m., still a few hours until Robert's expected arrival time. The bags contained ingredients for a special dinner and a small surprise. Robert's favorite wine and sparkling cider for Aiden to enjoy. She planned to celebrate her husband's return in style. Aiden. I've returned home. In the living room, Aiden was sitting on the sofa, focused on his tablet when he noticed his mother entering. He gave a slight smile but quickly returned to the screen. Olivia frowned at her son's slightly different behavior, as he would usually come running to her. What's the matter? Was school fun today? She called out as she headed to the kitchen. Indeed. All right. Aiden's voice was quieter than usual and sounded somewhat tense. Olivia started taking the steak out of the bag, but concerned about her son's behavior. She returned to the living room. Are you playing with a new space app? She sat next to her son. Aiden gave a small nod but wouldn't take his eyes off the screen. Olivia peered at her son's face and noticed he had a serious expression and even appeared somewhat anxious. Aiden, is something wrong? No, I'm fine, he said while continuing to scroll through something on the screen. Olivia was a bit worried, but thinking that mood changes weren't uncommon for a child approaching adolescence. She returned to the kitchen while preparing the special dinner. She occasionally glanced at her son. Aiden never took his eyes off the tablet, sometimes frowning, tapping the screen with his finger. After cooking for about an hour, Olivia looked at the clock. It was just past 7 p.m. There was still no contact from Robert, but it wasn't unusual for him to be late. Aiden, wash your hands. Dinner will be ready soon, she called out. There was no answer. Looking into the living room, Aiden was gone. Olivia was a bit surprised and walked down the hallway, knocking on her son's door. Aiden. Dinner is ready. There was a sound from inside the room, but no response. Olivia opened the door. Aiden was standing near the window, gazing outdoors. The tablet had been left on his bed. Honey, are you okay? Olivia softly inquired. Aiden slowly turned around. His face was pale and his eyes were red and puffy. He looked like he had been sobbing. Aiden, what's the matter? Olivia went to her son. Mom? Aiden remarked in a shaky voice. Dad, is Dad coming home soon? Yes, he should be. I'm expecting to hear from him shortly, Olivia said while touching her son's hair. What happened? Were you bullied in school? Aiden shook his head. Mom, he started to say, then stopped. His words would not come out, although he looked to be attempting to convey something. Tell me whatever you want. Olivia touched the shoulder of her son. After taking a seat on the bed, Aiden inhaled deeply regarding the tablet. Her phone rang at that very moment. Olivia looked at her husband's name on the screen. It comes from Robert, she was going to respond. Hold on. Rose heard Aiden's voice abruptly. To stop his mother from answering the phone, he took hold of her hand. What are you doing, Aiden? Olivia was perplexed. The phone continued to ring before going to voicemail. A moment later, a fresh message notification rung. Olivia looked at the message before heading home. I'll be there in 5 minutes, but there was traffic. I'm excited to see you. I adore you. Dad will return home shortly. Olivia grinned. Let's clean up and have a wonderful meal now. Aiden remained still. He continued to gaze at the window. His hands shook a little. Aiden. Olivia was starting to worry. Was there an actual incident? Do you have anything you'd rather not tell your father? Aiden remained silent. Typed the password on the iPad that was taken from the bed. He appeared to be looking for something frantically. Mom. He started talking again, but his words were stifled. Olivia was ready to say something, but she was starting to get quite concerned about her son's strange conduct. The doorbell rang. Dad is present. Olivia got to her feet. Aiden's face took a radical turn at that instant. He dropped the tablet and grabbed his mother's arm violently as a terrified expression came to his eyes. Don't allow Dad enter the home, Mom, he yelled. What do you say? Olivia was stunned. Now let's flee. Please, Let me clarify, please. The terror was trembling in Aiden's voice. In an attempt to get his mother to rise, he tugged hard at her hand. Aiden ceased his jokes. Dad has returned home. Please, Mom. Aiden was about to burst into tears. It's risky, I assure you. Once more, the doorbell rang. Olivia was perplexed and unsure of what to do. Her son appeared to be really afraid. The door will be opened by me. You remain here. At last, she was able to refuse. With an even tighter grip on his mother's arm, Aiden yelled, Dad is, Mom. Dad is. He stammered out what he was saying. Even when Olivia was pounding, the doorbell rang again. Aiden, get out! There was Robert's voice. After grabbing the iPad, Aiden dragged his mother out the room. He pulled her toward the back door through the kitchen. What's happening, Aiden? Olivia made an effort to stop, but she gave in to her son's pleading and chose to follow him. Let me clarify. Get inside the vehicle. Pulling his mother into the yard, Aiden unlocked the back door. Olivia and her kid made their way to the car, Olivia's mind awash with uncertainty and fear. She unlocked the door and pulled out her vehicle keys. Jumping into the passenger seat, Aiden did just that. His face was pale with terror and smeared with tears. I have faith in you, Aiden, but you must clarify. Olivia's hands were shaking as she turned on the engine. The earth trembled as a thunderous explosion reverberated from within the home. Olivia whirled around, startled. From the window in the kitchen, she could see smoke rising. What? She could not think of anything to say. Hurry, Mom, Aiden yelled. We must leave. Olivia pressed the gas pedal and took off. She noticed black smoke billowing from her home as she looked in the rearview mirror, the house where she spent 13 years of her life. She could also see Robert standing still at the entryway. What in the world, Aiden? Mom, Dad was attempting to murder us. With a quivering voice, Aiden spoke. He attempted to show his mother the tablet. Here is all the proof. His communications. Dad's phone was synchronized with my iPad. The explosion from the house and her kid's terrified demeanor made Olivia unable to trust what her son had spoken. This was reality, and she had to accept it. She sped the vehicle out of the neighborhood and onto the main road. Olivia was in a fog while driving. Her thoughts were racing, and the road ahead seemed hazy. She shut off the engine and pulled to a stop on a quiet residential street. She clutched the driving wheel outside the window with trembling fists. In the fading twilight, the streetlights flickered. Rain. Aiden. She looked at her kid. What's going on? Tears gleamed in Aiden's eyes, and his face was pallid. He extended the iPad toward his mom. Look at this, Mom. He was trembling, as he said. I was using my iPad to play a game last week. Suddenly, Dad's text showed up. It appears to have been connected to Dad's phone. Despite her dread and perplexity, Olivia glanced at the tablet screen her son was displaying. Conversations between Robert and an unidentified woman were seen. Jennifer. On the screen, Olivia read the name. That was the name she had never heard of. Scroll down. Aiden persuaded his mom. Olivia used her finger to scan through the texts. They appeared to be casual talks at first, but as the dates went on, the subject matter got increasingly personal. Then her blood froze when she saw a message from 3 days earlier. Going according to plan. She believes she signed the life insurance forms last week for no apparent reason. It will appear that the explosion was an accident. The stove's gas leak is the setup. The response was equally scarier. Excellent, Robert. We may use the insurance money to start a new life when that woman leaves. Take caution. Avoid hurting yourself. Olivia is this person, had run out of things to say. Her 13-year married husband, whom she trusted and adored, had been plotting her murder. It was unthinkable. Aiden sobbed, Mom, I found it before Dad came home. Since yesterday, I've been considering how to tell you, but I was afraid. I had no idea what my father may do. Olivia gave her son a hug. She was devastated by the idea that this 12-year-old youngster had been harboring such a horrible reality. She buried her face in her son's hair and murmured, You saved my life, Aiden. The weeping continued. Olivia's phone rang abruptly. It came from Robert. Fear froze her as she gazed at the phone. Don't respond, Aiden screamed. The phone continued to ring until ceasing. Not long later, a fresh message alert went off. You're where? What took place? The home blew apart. I'm concerned. Get in touch with me right now. Olivia inhaled deeply. I must make a police call. Her hands shaking, she punched 911. When the operator answered, she gently described the circumstances. She informed them of the explosion, the text revealing her husband's scheme, and the current whereabouts of both herself and her kid. "We are immediately dispatching cops. Don't leave where you are." The operator gave the order. Olivia wrapped her arm over Aiden's shoulder and hung up. "It's all right. We are now secure." Her heart, however, was in disarray. What had Robert done? She didn't think their marriage was terrible enough to plot murder, even though it wasn't flawless. And just who was this Jennifer? 20 minutes later, 2 siren-free police cars drew up next to their vehicle. Olivia and Aiden each gave a separate statement after 4 cops exited. The iPad was confiscated as proof. "You and your kid will remain in a secure place tonight, Miss S. Wilson. With kindness," a female officer said, "until your spouse is found. Will he be taken into custody?" Olivia's voice was tiny as she inquired. "The inquiry has already started. We're investigating the explosion site," the officer stated in a formal manner. "An arrest warrant will be issued if there is enough evidence." Olivia gave a nod. I didn't believe it. She had been cooking a special supper to commemorate her husband's homecoming only a few hours prior. Olivia glanced at her home before climbing into the police SUV. She could make out emergency vehicle lights flashing in the distance, red and blue. Everything she had created, including her life, was now in smoke and flames. "Mom," Aiden grasped her hand. "What will take place?" Olivia turned to face her son. His blue eyes were strong and filled with fear and worry. He had used all of his might to save his mother. Her honest response was, "I don't know, honey. We are together nonetheless. That's what counts." Olivia and Aiden were brought to a motel following a protracted interview at the police station. The policeman pledged to maintain vigilance outside. Aiden came in and slumped on the bed, looking worn out. Olivia was equally exhausted, but she had to be resilient for her son. "Take a nap." She put a blanket over Aiden. "I can't sleep, Mom," Aiden murmured softly. "I get it." Olivia took a seat beside her son. "I have the same sentiments." They were quiet for a while. Olivia's phone finally rang. The cops were involved. On the other end, the investigator stated, "We have news. Miss S. Wilson, Robert Wilson, your spouse, has been taken into custody. He was discovered not far from the scene of the explosion. Additionally, we detained Jennifer Blake, a lady who was accompanying him." Were they honest? Olivia's voice was shaking as she asked. "The texts on the tablet constitute conclusive proof, although they are still under investigation. Additionally, it has been shown that the explosion was caused intentionally. The kitchen's gas line was purposefully broken." Olivia gave a nod. "Thank you." She hardly got the words out. She hung up and looked at Aiden. "They caught Dad," she muttered. Aiden's expression was one of relief. "Are we secure now?" "Indeed. We're secure." Olivia gave her son a hug. "Many thanks." They hardly slept that night. More information surfaced in the morning. The police inquiry revealed that Robert had been having an affair with Jennifer for 6 months and had plotted Olivia's murder in order to obtain the $2 million from her life insurance. Their intention was to portray the explosion as an accident brought on by a gas leak. "One thing is beyond my comprehension," Olivia questioned the investigator. "Why now?" They calculated the timing. "When you would be exhausted from your night duty," the detective responded. "He reasoned that you wouldn't have time to flee in the event of a gas explosion. But that strategy didn't work out because of your son's fast thinking." Olivia inhaled nervously. She wouldn't be here today without Aiden. A 12-year-old youngster had rescued his mother from an adult-planned, malevolent trap. "Now, what should we do?" Olivia's voice was tiny as she inquired. The detective added softly, "You can only go forward one step at a time. The evidence is enough, yet the trial will start. We promise your safety." The brightness of a fresh day was streaming in through the hotel window. Overnight, Olivia's life had fallen apart. However, one thing was for sure: the bravery and love of her son Aiden. She had no other hope except that. In the courtroom's serious setting, Robert sat in front and she looked at his back. When the decision was announced, her ex-husband's shoulders barely slightly lowered. The identical punishment was given to Jennifer Blake, who was seated next to him. Conspiracy to conduct insurance fraud and attempted murder. "So it's over," Olivia whispered. 3 months had passed throughout the trial. Her life and Aiden's have altered drastically in that time. They chose to relocate to a different town as their house. which had been destroyed in the explosion, was considered irreparable. A new house. That place was filled with too many memories, pleasant recollections, and the recollections of a horrible betrayal today. Olivia's lawyer handed her a bundle of documents as she left the courthouse. The house insurance will be paid in full, but the life insurance is void. Additionally, you would receive half of Robert's assets, the attorney clarified. It ought to be sufficient to begin a new life. Olivia gave a nod. They didn't care about money. The scars in her heart, however, would not heal. "Mom, leave," Aiden whispered softly. Over the course of these months, Aiden, now 13, had abruptly grown up, sought therapy, and come to terms with his father's treachery. He had been remarkably strong. They moved to a little town with a view of Lake Michigan, on the other side of Michigan. Aiden had begun at a new school, and Olivia had moved to a nearby hospital. At first it was challenging, but with time, the two were adjusting to their new surroundings. Olivia and Aiden sat on the porch that evening, enjoying the soft lake air. The sound of the waves was comforting, and the starry sky extended out. "I have something to tell you, Aiden," Olivia started out softly. "What?" Aiden glanced at his mom. "You saved my life on the day you came to my rescue." She gave her son a cheek pat. "How could you muster such bravery?" Aiden pondered for a moment before responding. "Although I was afraid, I was more afraid of losing you." Olivia gave her son a hug. His little frame had suddenly expanded to her shoulder. Although he was taller than his father, he had a very different heart, pure, courageous, and kind. "We are still a family, even though it is only the two of us." Olivia spoke those words. A true family, really. Throughout the trial, Aiden grinned. Robert never really expressed regret. He even attempted to defend his behavior while coolly acknowledging the specifics of the scheme. "He said that I was stuck. I required a fresh start," he asserted. Olivia made an effort but was unable to comprehend. Although she occasionally felt worn out from her marriage, it was inconceivable for her to harm her family. Aiden in particular. "Should we go fishing tomorrow, Mom?" abruptly Aiden inquired. "Jacob, a buddy from school, told me that there are many fish in the lake in this area." Olivia chuckled. "Yes. Are you able to rise early?" "Naturally." "Under the starry sky," Aiden replied cheerfully. They started discussing their intentions for the future. Next weekend, a picnic. Summer vacation camping. Their discussion was influenced by Aiden's upcoming science project, Small Dreams and Hopes. Olivia could not have envisioned such a life without her spouse a year ago. New connections and a new community. However, she was now embracing this shift. Although the wounds persisted, they were slowly getting better. "Aiden, you are loved." She gave her son's hair a quick kiss. "Mom, I also adore you." Under the stars, Aiden cuddled up to his mother and listened to Lake Michigan's waves. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt anything: hope and tranquility. Have faith in the future. Hope for their little family of two in the future. She grinned softly and stroked her son's head. It was a fresh start for them.